but we have a really exciting episode today. For everyone that wants to keep up on all of the latest hashtag Event Icons episodes, make sure that you are subscribed. So you can do so by going to www.event-icons.com. And that's where you can go to see all of the latest, greatest episodes, all of our blog posts, resources. We have a ton of good content out there for you guys. Also, if you want to see some of Endless's other content, make sure that you are subscribed to our newsletter, and you can do so by going to helloendless.com, and that is where you will be able to subscribe to the blog.
Hey, it's time for another episode of hashtag Event Icons, presented by Endless Events, the show where you get to ask the icons of the events industry anything. Just follow us on social media to ask questions. Our iconic guests will answer them live during the entire show. Before we get started, the more people we have watching, the better the conversation. So please help share hashtag Event Icons on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Just tell your friends to watch live on any of our social media channels. Now, without any further delay, this is hashtag Event Icons.
So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I would like to introduce our guest today, Shawn Cheng, who is a huge part of Event Icons. I feel like you're always our number one supporter. You're always at everything. And we love to have you on. Number one fan. We love to have you on. So if you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit to people who maybe aren't familiar with you, and then just talk about how you kind of got into the events industry.
Oh, of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Shawn Cheng, and I am a project manager with MCI Group that based in the Vancouver, Canada's office. I'm basically an agency planner so far. I've been in the industry for over, I was actually almost over 10 years now. I kind of starting my feet wet in 2010 when the Winter Olympic happened in Vancouver, and just kind of fall in love with all the excitement and kind of work my way through in the industry. And just throughout the process, I really enjoy what the industry is about, and the industry gave me a lot of growth and build my networking here, and so therefore I'm being very involved with the industry. I'm still a member for MPI, and I was on the local board for a couple of years, and then I'm also a member with PCMA, and then I am on the PCMA board currently. I'm the current president for the Canada West chapter. Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, you're a part of just about every we call them all the 3-letter acronyms, or there's always so many organizations out there. But yeah, I feel like you have so much experience and depth of knowledge in a lot of them. So it kind of goes perfectly with our topic today, which we're talking a lot about industry advocacy. So obviously our whole industry got turned upside down during the pandemic. And there's been a lot of talk about what to do next. Is the answer, more funding and more stimulus packages? Is the answer, safer events? Is it taking breaks from events? I think a lot of people are just kind of, swimming around and just not really sure of a game plan. So what are some of the discussions that you all have had around what to do in this, extremely unique scenario that has never happened before to our industry? And what are kind of some of the game plan steps that have been in discussion?
Well, I mean, I think actually, if we take a step back a little bit, is this is actually not unique and first crisis that the industry has been facing. Just couple years ago in 2008, the financial crisis was equally huge, I would say, but it just is not as I would say globally impact as the way that the current pandemic impact us. But what we realize, I think, when everything is happened, is the industry is still not really united as one industry as we are hoping for, and therefore hence for all the confusion and kind of lost direction, right? Because we all impact on it, and we all want to do something, because that's what our nature is about, but we all not knowing who should ask and who should follow and what should do, because I think every association or every region, and honestly and not everyone join association, right? And so
Right.
it's kind of hard to really put a joint effort together. And what I notice happening is a lot of effort being done. A lot of them are success, and like I think for many of the city in region around the world, that you can see that the government able to kind of come in a pretty handy way that to really support the industry. But a lot of the efforts also not as successful as we are hoping for, right? And one challenge we are seeing right now, at least in the city that I am with in Canada, is the government somehow see us as white noise, which is we are not in a very organized way. And all they hear is us complain and talking about how important we are. But realistic is, if you really take a step back, and every industry are important, right? Like every industry are also impacting on this. It's not just us, and that's kind of what the challenge I feel we're facing right now. And at least in BC, we are trying to conquer this challenge, and so far we have just some of the progress. Is still a long way to go. But we do have a little bit progress. And I think the key is everyone just need to be patient, but also a more transparency communication among everyone is important.
I agree. And I really think what you said is so true, is there's not one united voice. I think there are so many organizations in the events industry, but yeah, I feel like there's, so many different conversations happening. And in terms of, that representation on the government level, sometimes it's not always as consistent as we probably would like. I think, more or less we all are fighting for the same thing. I think we all want to keep the industry alive and well and running, but it's kind of hard to get that voice and that message always across. So what are some ways that we can kind of come together as this industry and help towards this improvement of what's going on right now?
I think one thing is quite important is kind of change our mindset. I think one thing, so the CEO at PCMA, Sheriff, who I personally admire a lot, that like he keep mention and communicate this to the membership base. So to us is let's be the solution, not the problem. Let's thinking about how can we be the help, and how can we be the solution for all the challenge that the society are facing right now, and instead of simply be the one who crying for help and support. And it's hard because we do need the crying and support, don't get me wrong. And I think everyone know about, like, we are the first get hit and we're going to be the last recovery. But also, like looking at the way that, but if you look, I think the challenge for the industry is, like the challenge for this industry to come together is always because this industry is such a bridge industry. So we are not like doing a product, and we are not producing something concrete. We are kind of blending into every industry, right? Like every industry needs some sort of meeting or events to connect them together. Like you do business when you have two people meet together. That is a meeting. You celebrate with a party for wedding, or you come together to grieve together for a funeral. That is the event, and those are us. But they are very different type of event, right? So it's very hard. I understand it's very hard for us to actually come together as one voice, because we are not one voice. But we are all doing one thing the same, which is bring people together and create that connection, no matter what connection the outcome we want it to be. So this is kind of what we can do is, let's beat that gap. And today, yes, maybe we are limited in terms for the traditional way of creating that connection, which is face-to-face, which is meeting or events. But that shouldn't stop us, because we can explore that into what we are very familiar with right now, the virtual world, right? They are very different. The engagement, the behavior is very different, but we are doing the same thing. We are doing the same thing like we always do, and like we're good at it, which is bridge people together. So let's don't forget that. And hi,
Yeah.
Priscilla. That's someone I know are watching it.
I love that. Priscilla, yeah, go Shawn. No, I think there's so many things that you just said that really resonate with people too. And maybe kind of also help identify some of the issues is, yeah, I think it can be frustrating. Obviously, this pandemic has been going on for a while now. We've had a few months at it. And I think there still is a lot of, questions in the air. There's a lot of not knowing what to do. But
Talking about a
I,
few months.
I know it feels like it's been years. It feels like so long, but yeah, I think part of what you said helps identify the issue of yes, we are all in this singular community, but we're all doing such different things. And like you said, yeah, even what you were saying, like yeah, a funeral or a wedding is so much different than a corporate meeting or some of these really large scale events. So it can be really challenging to find one common way to solve this issue. So I think that I love that. I haven't really heard that messaging a lot, and it's kind of an interesting observation to make, but I think it's so true. What do you think? I also like what you said when you mentioned not being a part of the problem, not crying and being upset about it. I mean, obviously there's room for that. But what do you think is the next step of, being a part of that solution? I think the conversation around it is so beneficial. But what are some of those conversations that you and your team are having when you're talking about, actionables and next steps of what to kind of do?
Yeah, I mean, so for that, if I can, I'm gonna kind of answer that question in two part. So
Yeah, of
first
course.
is how we as a company at MCI been doing is we obviously blending into what the virtual world is, and like I mentioned, I think the strengths that we as the event professional has is the ability actually to create that connection, and now we just need to expand our portfolio for say from doing that in a live environment to a digital environment, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been doing that a lot for all of our client, and also at the same time, I think we are playing more strategic role to many of our clients because we are actually become the partner to kind of guide them through this uncertainty because we are in a phase that like no one expecting the scale to be like this challenge. I don't think anyone expecting that, but I think we are able to do that. And don't get me wrong, it's still a learning process and still kind of even like a walk on the ice type of things. And we learn where we go, right? But I think that is kind of how we've been operate. But also I think from an industry perspective, where I am in Vancouver and BC. There's a lot of different group, like I say, we are a very diverse industry, and there's a lot of groups been working on different things. But I think I feel that the different thing all come into one solution, one answer, which is let's work with the government and let's be that solution, right? So I'm being part of a working group, which is a very diverse members on the team that from different sector, and so far the first step the working group been doing is actually develop a safety restart guideline for business event. And for everyone who listen to this, if you are in BC, I highly suggest you should take a look. But if you are around the world, I actually also suggest you take a look because the guideline is actually very generic. That should be able to apply for almost every region, and it's a guideline I think we are pretty proud of that we have. If I can, I don't have the link ready for me, but if you can just simply Google PCMA Canada West chapter, is pretty front in line in terms for where it's located on our homepage. So you can go take a look. PCMA Canada West chapter is a proud supporter for the guideline. So the guideline is very simple. Is we identify what business event is, and then we actually lay out some of the option in terms of how you can safely conduct those events. Because our approach is yes, we are in a pandemic that is beyond what we can control, but we also noticed that in a safe or a highly moderate control environment, it is actually highly chance and doable to stop the spreads. And therefore, some of the principle that we put into the guideline are kind of some of the suggestion that I think every event planner can take. Some of them or using all of them to conduct your event, because I know in some of the city you are already open up. In BC so far we are allow events happening under 50 people. So our next phase right now right now we are pushing and encourage everyone to read and using the guideline. And the next step right now is actually to continue. Hopefully we are able to continue collecting the case study from everyone who apply with the guideline. And so therefore we will be able to build a stronger case and show it to the government. We think this will work, and it actually work. And therefore, because it's really hard when you talk to the government right now, say, looking at how many job loss and looking at how many like the revenue shrinking in this industry, so you need to open up. But because that's not what they care right now, right? What they care right now is how many confirmed cases rising out and how busy the hospital are, right? So
Right.
we should not ask the wrong question at this time. And I think right now is really more about, and so far the guidelines we received very good positive feedback from the government.
Oh, great.
They're really happy to see, the industry taking a step like this. And so this is kind of what we think will work is, you work with the government and work with the health authority, right? Because that's what they care. They care about life. And honestly, we should too.
Yes. No, I fully agree. And I think that's such an awesome thing to have a tactical plan, because I think there are still so many questions. And like you were saying, right now, it's hard to come to a government and have a concrete conversation, because a lot of it is hypotheticals. It's like, okay, if we do plan this and there's this many people that come, and if this happens, then maybe something, maybe it'll be a safer environment. So I think having these case studies and an actual step-by-step plan is genius. And I think it's something that a lot of event planners are really craving right now. I did share the URL to the Canada West PCMA page. So for everyone who's watching on all of the different channels, make sure to go check that out and look for this guideline. And so being on the team that kind of puts this guideline together, that sounds like a really, kind of interesting thing to be a part of. Was there any, when you guys were coming up with this kind of a guideline together, was there any kind of conflict, or were there any, opposing sides where people think that, meeting together at all isn't safe? Or was everyone kind of on the same page of there is a safe way to do this? We just have to figure out how.
I think for and I also just want to say, for the guideline, I personally didn't involve as much as I'm hoping for. I want to using this opportunity to give a big shout out to, I think she's probably on your episode before, Emma Parson and Alexis or Karolek, who with Connect 7. They are, I will actually say they're really the one who actually do a lot of the research and core study to put the guidelines together. And also I just want to also mention that, this is not the only guideline so far we have in the industry. I think there are a lot. I think I just saw comments from, apologize if I pronounce your name wrong, Guganason, that you put something together here. If you can share the link to everyone, I think that would be great as well. But I also know Event Industry Council, EIC, who also have some guideline put together. I think is worth to check out. And so there are a lot of those things happening, and I encourage everyone to watching them. But kind of, Sarah, back to your question earlier, is are there any conflict and debate? Yes, of course.
Yeah.
And therefore, at the end, I think the guideline that we put is very generic, just because there are a lot of the suggestions that at the end decide to be removed just because they are too specific. And so they might not apply to everyone, right? But the purpose of the guideline is still the same, which is we do firmly believe in a controllable environment that we are able to conduct meeting and business event specifically in a safety manner. And we all know how important business event is for every industry. And therefore, if the health restriction allow, and for example, I know this is probably not a good conversation right now, because I know many cities, including us, are kind of experiencing the second wave of the pandemic right now. And so, like, for example, right now, yes, no. Like, even me personally don't think you should open it up to a couple hundred, right?
Right.
But we should have this in place, and we should continue to do it in a smaller scale and ready when we are able to scale up.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I was just going to mention that too, actually, because I know we had this scheduled a while ago, and then we kind of had to push it
Yeah, when
back.
we
So
first
actually,
started, it was a couple months ago, actually, and
right.
that was the time everything looks really promising.
Exactly. Yep. Everything was like everyone was already kind of talking about maybe some 2021 events, maybe,
Yes.
something like that. But I think, really recently, this is probably almost like a better time to have this conversation because I think, safety is, put at the front of people's minds. I think people are really, kind of getting back to, back in March of when things were really scary. We don't really know what everything's going to look like. There could be like another, simple little wave of panic with those types of things. So I think it's important that we're having these conversations too. I think another part of that is, obviously these guidelines are going to have to be updated. So what do you think that kind of process looks like? How often do you think we should be looking and readdressing these types of things? Because I know Endless, we also kind of put together like a little planning a hybrid safely guideline. But I think now it's, definitely time to kind of readdress that. And with everything changing so constantly, it's kind of hard to stay ahead and on top and know exactly what's going on just with all these changes. So how do you think would be like the best way to kind of navigate those situations?
I don't think there's the right answer for that, and I don't think we should put like a time to it, like every couple months or a couple of days, because we can. It really depending on how things develop, right? So my suggestion is, I know we are tired about it, but we should continue to keep an eye on what our health authority in your local region or in your country that you stay are saying. Like I think right now, we are recording this in mid-November right now, right? I think at this point we should all agree, a few things. Contact tracing, I think, is super important to have. Social distancing, I think, is important to have. I think PPE, so like masks or some sort of glove, like to for your health, personal protection, is still debatable. But many science, research, and studies show it also help. I know it's a controversy topic, so I'm just gonna be a very generic in here. Those are kind of where we are right now. But we also know on the horizon, a massive fast testing is kind of, we see a lot of good promising from different country and different city, and I think that will be a game changer for the event industry if we are able to do a fast testing. And then of course the vaccine conversation seems promising in many study lately, right? So when any of those come in place, the conversation will change dramatically.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think it's just gonna, be this ever-changing kind of playing field that we're gonna have to continue just updating and really focusing on. So, I think you're right to not put, necessarily a timestamp on it. And I think a lot of the reasons why things are so vague is because, we're allowing for a lot of flexibility and room to change over time. So, I think that's all really beautiful. I also want to draw attention again to Gugan, if I'm saying that right. He also shared some resources to his LinkedIn and his company where they're also doing some of these, studies. They said they're studying over 16 event organizers in their inner circle, and they're, noticing kind of these common threads. I think that's going to be something really powerful moving forward, is these stats, these studies. I know there's been studies in Germany where they've, done different experiments with, size of the audience and, the PPE, like you were talking about, or the PPP, and making sure that everything is, as safe as possible, and that distancing is, also implemented in these types of scenarios. But seeing how effective that really is. I think a lot of it, at the beginning was guesswork and not really knowing what protocols and what safety procedures are the most effective. But I think we're slowly going to be starting to get those answers, and relying on these studies and on science and these, expert opinions, I think will be something that we'll have to keep really, really close to home as we continue moving forward.
Yeah, it was.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, you're totally right because we're just still in the early stage of
Mm-hmm.
learning this virus, right? I was joking to my friend who's in the medical field a couple of days ago, say like, well, you will never, because she is in the academic side, so I said, well, you will never lost your job now because for the next 50 year you can just study. You just there's so much things for you to study. You can publish paper literally every year
Yep.
until you retire.
That is so true. Yeah, I feel like there's so much information out there that we're still yet to discover, but I definitely have hope. I think we're getting there. So that's always exciting to, have hope for the future. And like you said, with fast testing, with maybe, possible vaccine coming out, I think that will, instill some more confidence and security in people when they're thinking about, attending the next hybrid or in-person portion of an event, which kind of is a nice transition. I do want to ask your opinion on hybrid and moving forward, with even this next year in 2021. How do you think that landscape is going to look like for events? It doesn't have to be an expert opinion or nothing like backed by science, but just in your overall opinion, what do you suspect it to kind of play out in this next year?
Well, I mean, if you know me, I'm actually always a big believer of the power of hybrid event. If budget or situation allow, even before pandemic, I always pushing the client or to pushing whenever I involve with any sort of event, I think it should be hybrid. And the whole reason is it's actually a very simple mindset. The more I think about it, is there shouldn't be any limitation to you shouldn't have any barrier to block people to attend your event simply because it's travel or cost or time restriction, right? Because if they want to attend your event and whether it's free or pay, that they would like to invest their time and money to attend, we should try to make it happen to them no matter where they are. And I think that is why the virtual component come into place, is because that gave you the ability to limit all those limitation. So long story short, I think for the next year, I see hybrid event is 100% going to be all the case for every type, and every event need to be like that. Which is you ideally you will have a live component, but you're always going to have virtual participation. The ability, like the benefit for that is also that give you the ability to scale up or down. Because when you're talking about hybrid, they can be a 50-50 split, they can be a 70-30 split, or they can be 80-20 split. And when you are in the process of planning and you notice that you probably not even going to have a live event, you can then 100% transform back into a virtual setting. And that gave you this ability if you kind of starting with a hybrid model, so you can always adjust. Right. Then don't get me wrong, there's a lot of challenge into it. And if you're a planner, like in your mind, you probably, well, but Shawn, that means I need to like do my budget like multiple times because they're going to change quite a bit. And that is true. But if you're thinking about that at least you won't have that panic moment, because I think like talking from personal experience, I know this year is definitely, you have a lot of those moments, which is you actually don't know what to do next, right? Especially in March, like every day, like literally every day, the situation is changing. And if your original project is a solely in-person event, which I would say 80% of all our projects are, right? Like virtual used to be a very nice to have thing. It's a nice to have. So you don't have that infrastructure ready, and that gave you the challenge. That's when you have the pivot conversation. That's why you have the moment of, all right, how can I do it, right? But if you are building your event right now, moving into 2021 or on, I will actually say, like for the next 3 years or hopefully even longer, that should be the ways. You're coming in with the mindset of it should be a hybrid event, so you are ready for both. And then that gave you the ability to be adjust and be fragile.
Yeah, I love that. Just like we were talking about, adding some room for flexibility in the guidelines and things like that. I think you're so right. Hybrid definitely allows that flexibility in events. We saw that with a lot of people coming to us, and that hard pivot of, okay, everything from 100% in person to 100% virtual was a lot. So I really also like how you kind of broke it up into percentages. It doesn't have to be, I think a lot of people are thinking hybrid is, full both versions of in person and virtual. But you're right, it could be as much or as little of each as you need it to be, especially as things are changing so much. As if things are able to go, a little bit more in person at the end of next year, I think people would love to allow for that, but also maintaining that virtual component. And like you said at the beginning of this question too was, allows for accessibility. People that maybe weren't necessarily able to travel or to attend because of other work conflicts or things like that, are people now have that opportunity. So I think you're, just limiting yourself if you choose, just one or the other, as we're able to, meet in person more, looking into the years to come. But I think that's a really great way to look at it, and such a great selling point for people who are maybe a little bit nervous to kind of go into the hybrid realm, because like you said, there's so many moving parts to it, that it can kind of seem overwhelming. When you talk to people, how do you kind of ease their minds with the overwhelming portions, besides, like the flexibility? Is there any tips that you give to people when they're kind of navigating this hybrid world, that maybe it's their first time?
So before the tips, I will actually say everyone should actually have understanding that when we're talking about hybrid event or hybrid model, there are actually a lot of different style
Mm-hmm.
of hybrid events, and that is actually the beauty of it, because it's actually quite exciting, and there's so many different way that you can operating it, and we already see that from many association or many event organizer be trying different thing. We saw some of them are using they have a main hub in a city and then broadcasting live, so it's really
Mm,
more like you have that's kind of the traditional hybrid event, which is you still have your main event, but
yeah.
you also have a larger audience watching them around the world. But we also start seeing a lot of the hybrid event break it up into even more micro size. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a term called omni-channel, or there's a term called multi-site. I think no matter what it is, that means that you actually have a lot of different small hubs, and that's actually also probably will be the reality, at least for a little while later, because of the regulation for every city in terms of how many people you can have, right?
Right.
So those are kind of, but then you still have a large audience online, and so there's so many different ways that you can do hybrid event. So if this is your first time kind of navigating to this field, my suggestion actually is, first of all, actually go back to the basic. You guys should, everyone should sit down with your team or with your client or with your organization and asking the question that you think you already know, which
Mm,
is the basic 5W and H, right? Is why you are doing it. What is your mission statement, and why the event exists, and who is attending, why they attending. And in today's war, or in the environment we are in right now, is there still a reason that we need to exist? What is the value proposition of this event? Is it changing, or is it stay the same? Like, I'm a big believer is you need to define yourself first. You need to do the soul searching first
mm-hmm.
before you actually going to plan anything else. And trust me, like, if you do that part, it will make the next few steps more easier. So like, once you do the soul searching, then the next part is you then be able to build a framework, which is, once you know who you are, then let's see, in the environment we are in, the reality we are in, what make the most sense in terms for achieve what we want to achieve, right? Maybe the conclusion come to the end is, I actually think it should be a solely virtual event, or maybe it actually need to be more a very small in person, but then most of the people will participate online, or it will be evenly split. So that is when you will actually decide what type of framework the event will look like. And that is also the time I will encourage you guys to challenge yourself. Like
Hmm.
this is where the innovation come into play. Maybe there is a new way of doing hybrid event that I didn't mention or I didn't know about, but that way will make most sense for your audience, right? Because you know your audience more than anyone else. So this is kind of the important first two steps, and then you come into the meat part, which is you actually throw in, connect with Sarah and have the technical team in place. And that's also another thing I would suggest. Don't limit yourself. Don't be hesitant to ask your partner or your technology supplier or vendor. Give them your idea, because maybe you think it's impossible for them. It's a simple switch.
Mm.
And so in have the conversation with them, co-creation of the whole experience with them, and you will find this actually not as hard as you think.
Yeah, I love that. And those are two of the initiatives that we're really trying to push too is first of all, yeah, starting with that strategy, really understanding why. I think at the beginning a lot of people were, transitioning to virtual because it was a necessity and they kind of had to, rather than, okay, why are we doing this virtual event? What is the purpose? Who are we bringing together? And I think you're so right that, these people that are planning these events know their audience the best. So you have to do what's right for them, and you can't just make this decision just because it's you're backed into a corner. You have to do it with purpose, and then that will just lead to a better overall experience for everyone involved. And the second part, yeah, leaning on your technology providers, leaning on your network and support system. We had a conversation yesterday or last week on Event Icons about people getting talent for virtual events, and there's a lot of experts out there and people that are so good at what they do. So reaching out to your networks and your contacts, you don't have to do it all alone necessarily. There's a lot of options out there, where bringing our networks together and creating these virtual experiences that are really profound and advanced is kind of what we're hoping to do. And I think we're kind of slowly getting there as people learn more about the virtual space. But yeah, I love both of those tips. I think those are amazing to start with. Yeah, strategies. We can't say it enough. We keep telling people, think about the what you're going to do before you start diving right into platforms and technology, because I totally understand the instinct to do that because it's overwhelming. So you want to make sure that you get your hands dirty and you start learning all these things. But before that, taking those steps to plan, and really figure out the outcome, I think is far more important than picking the right platform or the right technology provider. Absolutely. Awesome. Do you have any final words, Shawn, for our audience, or anything else that you'd like to say on the current state of events or virtual, or anything about industry advocacy, that you'd like to just share? If anyone walked away with this presentation with one thing, what would you want them to walk away with?
I mean, if only one thing I will actually say is, don't be afraid to try things and make mistake. But the most important thing is actually share them. And that's kind of what I
Mm,
find is very helpful for me this year is, you go in with a positive mind, which the thing is, we are in an environment that there's so many things we cannot control, right? We cannot control when the pandemic will finish.
mhm.
In a virtual world, we also cannot control. There's actually more things that we cannot control. And I know that drive a lot of us crazy. But let's go in and let's try things, but also let's share what we try and what we learn. If it's a success, definitely sharing, and if it's a failure, also worth to sharing, right? Because I feel it's kind of a big crash course that we are all learning things together.
Mhm.
And this kind of apply to both virtual or hybrid event, but also industry advocacy as well. Is I do feel, if one thing that the pandemic do well for us, again, like I don't think there's anything this do well for us, but it did bring us closer. I think it bring us closer both locally, with other sector or other business you probably never cross, like your life just never cross, but also bring us closer with globally with everyone who are watching this together. Yeah. I do feel the industry this year for me feel more smaller, which is a
Mhm.
good thing that I feel we are closer more. I was involved with the event, the Global Media Industry Day, GMID, earlier this year, that we have 15,000 people turn on to celebrate this day together, and it was a profound moment to me, because that they made me really feel that, like, I'm in an industry that have a global reach, and it's good to know there are people in other part of the world doing the same thing like me and have the same struggle and same challenge like me, and I think that is a very powerful thing. Is although our job is to create connection for other people, but we somehow actually didn't really connect with each other that
Mm.
well. And I think pandemic helped us to break the ice a little bit. So I hope we will be able to continue to build on that and be a very closer and more united industry.
Oh, I love that. Shawn, that was perfect. What a great way to wrap it up. I definitely think, yeah, relying on our community. I think it's such a beautiful industry to be a part of, and just continuing that growth going forward. And yeah, sharing your ideas. I think we keep saying it over and over, that network is so important. So share your ideas, your failures, what works, what doesn't. And I think we'll just see some beautiful innovation coming from this. You have another fan in the chat.
Yeah,
um,
Senya is actually a perfect example that
yeah.
she with the association ICA, which is the industry association, who did very well on how to handle the crisis, and their community, I feel, is even stronger. My observation is actually more stronger, more connected, and I think that is the
Wow.
perfect case study on
I love that.
how to
Yeah,
make the
no,
best out of it.
yeah, it's not even an idea. We have like examples of it happening all the time. So I think that's awesome. What just a great way to make it full circle and bring it home. But Shawn, thank you so much for joining us today. I
Thanks
think
for having me.
everyone got some really great information from it. For everyone that maybe missed or popped in at sometimes, but you want to watch the whole thing, like I said, definitely go to www.event-icons.com. We'll also share all of Shawn's resources that he mentioned today, so those can all be in the same place, and you guys will have links, and you can go check out all of these awesome guides and all this information, and just continue being a part of the community like we talked about. So make sure you keep jumping on these, ask questions, share in the chat. We love to hear all of these things, and it's awesome to see our community, our little Event Icons community grow as well. So Shawn, thank you again, and thank you to everyone who was watching, and we will see everyone next time. Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone. Be safe.
Thank you for joining us for another amazing episode of Event Icons. To catch all of the bonus content, resources mentioned, and an invite to our Facebook and LinkedIn groups, head to www.event-icons.com. Also, let us know what you thought about this week's episode. Share your biggest takeaway, and just tag your social media posts with Event Icons. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you again soon, right here on Event Icons.